These are the lecture notes for Chapter 34 on the digestive system. Of course, we're going to focus more on the human digestive system. But a digestive system in general functions in ingesting food. So there's, some sort of a mouth. And then breaking food down into small molecules that can cross plasma membranes. That process is called digestion. Then absorbing those nutrient molecules into the blood and eliminating the undigestible remains. If an animal has an incomplete digestive tract, like a planarian or flatworm, then it's only got a single opening, and that single opening is going to be the mouth and the anus. Whereas if it has a complete digestive tract, like the earthworm, it's going to have a mouth and an anus. It's going to have two openings and then a tube that goes from the mouth to the anus. Sometimes you'll hear animals referred to as continuous filter feeders, and an example of that is a clam. But then there are discontinuous feeders like humans and squid, and these feeders need a food storage area, which it can be a stomach or a crop. Herbivores, of course, eat only plants, and their teeth are specialized for eating plants. Their incisors, which is the front teeth, are specialized for clipping, and then they have premolars and molars that are specialized for grinding. Now, land snails and some insects are herbivores, and of course we have grazers like horses and cows and sheep. We have koala bears, which eat only eucalyptus leaves. So these are examples of herbivores. Then we have ruminants. Cows, goats, and sheep are ruminants, and ruminants are herbivores that have a stomach that's separated, that allows them to regurgitate or throw up their food and then swallow it again. Because what they're trying to digest is hard to digest. And we can't digest grass, but they can. And they have a four-chambered stomach, which allows that. So they are called ruminants. Then you have carnivores, which are specialized for eating meat. They only eat other animals, the meat of other animals. And their teeth are specialized for that. Their incisors are pointed, and they have enlarged canines that are also enlarged and pointed and sharp. That allows them to shear off pieces that are small enough to swallow. Spiders and sea stars are both carnivores. Of course, they don't have teeth, but they are carnivores. Dogs, lions, and dolphins are carnivores that have teeth like what I just described. The lion has pointed canine teeth that are used for killing its prey, sharp incisors for scraping the meat off the bones, and pointed molars for slicing flesh. So omnivores, like humans, have teeth that are kind of a compromise, I guess. They're specialized for both plant and meat diets. But we have other omnivores. They're clams and tube worms are omnivores. And then omnivores in the chordates are humans, pigs, and raccoons, and bears. And you can see the teeth here. So this is a teeth of a horse. The horse is going to have these flat molars and premolars. And then you can see the canines are reduced because it's not going to have to tear meat. And these incisors are for clipping, the plant material that they eat. But then you compare that to a lion, which has the large pointed canines and the pointed incisors and the sharp pointed molars and premolars. A dolphin, even though its teeth look different from the lion's, they're all sharp. They're all sharp and conical shaped. So definitely for eating meat, because they eat meat only. And then we have the teeth of an omnivore. So this is from a human skull. And you can see that the incisors are not pointed. They're flattened for clipping. But then we do have canines that are sharp, that are kind of sharp. And the molars are more flat like the horse molars. But the canines are kind of sharp, so they help, with eating meat. Human digestive system starts with the mouth, and then the food enters your mouth, you swallow it in your pharynx or throat, and it goes into your esophagus. So in the pharynx is a pathway for air and food. If it's air, it's going to enter your trachea, which is in front of your esophagus. But if it's food or drink, it's going to be swallowed and enter into your esophagus. And then it's going to enter, if you look kind of picture behind the liver, it's going to enter into your stomach, your small intestine, and then your large intestine. And then it's going to exit through the rectum and then the anus. There are also accessory organs of digestion. We have the salivary glands, which actually produce enzymes that help break down starch. In your mouth, the starch begins its digestion in your mouth because saliva contains the enzyme amylase, and it helps break down starch into sugar. Then we have the liver, which produces bile and helps break down fats into smaller pieces. We call that emulsification. And the gallbladder, which stores bile. And then we have the pancreas, which functions as an endocrine gland and an exocrine gland. But for the digestive system, it produces enzymes that are released into the small intestine, and they help to digest the food that we eat. In the mouth, this is where digestion begins, and some of that is mechanical digestion because we are chewing our food up into smaller pieces. The roof of the mouth is called the palate, and we have the hard palate, which is closer to our teeth, and the soft palate, which is closer to our throat. You can feel both of those with your tongue, but the palate separates the oral cavity from the nasal cavity. The oral cavity is basically everything below the palate, and then the nasal cavity is everything above in the nose area. The uvula is the extension of the soft palate that kind of hangs down in the back of your throat. There are 3 pairs of salivary glands, and they produce saliva, and saliva does contain a watery solution that has mucin in it, that makes it thicker. And then it also has salivary amylase, which begins the digestion of starch. It breaks starch down into sugar, the sugar maltose. And the tongue mixes chewed food with saliva and forms this into a bolus. So once you swallow your food, once you begin the swallowing process, we call it a bolus. And then when it's in the stomach, it turns into what we call chyme. I'll show you the word somewhere. So in the stomach, the mixture of food and, I don't see it here anywhere. Here we go. The mixture of food and stomach gastric juices and just all of the components inside the stomach. Once the food is in the stomach and mixes up with the stomach contents, it's called chyme. But before that, it's called a bolus. Okay? So after you swallow, or once the food leaves your mouth and you start to swallow it, it enters your pharynx, which is your throat. So that the food doesn't go into your nasal cavity, the soft palate will close off the nasopharynx when swallowing, which is the opening from the throat into your nose. And sometimes if you try to talk and eat at the same time, or there are times when this doesn't work as well, and you do end up with food or drink going up your nose. That can happen if you laugh. If you start laughing, or if you're trying to talk too much while you're eating, and it happens when you throw up. So the epiglottis is a flap of tissue that covers over the glottis, which is the opening into your windpipe or your trachea. And what that does is when you swallow, it keeps food from going down the wrong way. It keeps food from going into your trachea or your windpipe. And then the food leaves the throat or pharynx and enters the esophagus. And the only purpose of the esophagus is to transport the food to the stomach. Okay, and this is just showing you some of the structures in the oral cavity. Here's the hard palate, the soft palate, the pharynx, which the upper part is called the nasopharynx. So the soft palate closes off the nasopharynx when you swallow, and then you see the bolus. You're swallowing the bolus, and as it passes the epiglottis covers over the opening to the trachea, which is called the glottis. And food, the bolus of food goes down your esophagus. This is the layers of the walls of the digestive tract, which the only thing I want to focus on is that the lining of the digestive tract does have all these folds. And that is so that more nutrients can be absorbed. The movement of smooth muscle that moves that bolus of food down your esophagus to your stomach is called peristalsis. All right, the space inside the digestive tract, the space inside your stomach and your intestines is called the lumen. The contractions are called peristalsis that move your food along. And the lining outside of the digestive tract is called the peritoneum. All right, the stomach, some of the information about the stomach I want you to focus on and know is that it contains glands that secrete hydrochloric acid and also pepsin. Hydrochloric acid lowers the stomach pH to about 2. And this has a few functions. Number one, it can help kill bacteria, because I don't care how sanitary you are when you prepare your food or how sanitary you think it is in a restaurant. That's pretty much not true. There's bacteria on the food you eat, and you are eating bacteria when you eat your food. And some of that bacteria can be harmful. So the acid in your stomach can help kill that bacteria. But the other thing that it does is it lowers the pH so that this enzyme pepsin is activated. We don't want the pepsin to be activated all the time, because pepsin breaks down protein, and your stomach is also made of protein. So you don't want the pepsin to constantly be in an active state so that it's actually digesting your own stomach. You want it to just digest the protein in the food that you eat. So the stomach will secrete acid, which lowers the pH, and that will activate the pepsin, and it will begin breaking down protein in your stomach. So really, that's the only nutrient in your stomach that begins chemical digestion. The rest of the chemical digestion happens in your small intestine. One thing that protects the stomach from all that acid and all the enzymes is a layer of mucus. There also is something that can happen. It's very uncomfortable, but everyone has probably experienced it at some time. It's called heartburn. And that is when the stomach contents back up into the esophagus. Now, that can be just a temporary symptom of, just you ate too much, or just maybe what you ate was affecting your stomach and your esophagus, and that sphincter between your stomach and your esophagus. Or maybe you drink too many energy drinks or too much caffeine, because that will weaken the sphincter that is the sphincter between your esophagus and your stomach. And when it's weakened, then the contents of your stomach can back up. So caffeine can cause that. Smoking can cause that. There are different things that can cause it to happen over time. And some people actually get This is wrong. Let me fix this. I'm so sorry. I see a mistake. It says gastrointestinal reflux disease, and it should say gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD. Okay, that is what it should be. Gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD, and that acid reflux disease can cause heartburn as well. In the stomach, don't forget that the food that we were calling a bolus is now called chyme. That is the mixture of food and gastric juice, the stomach contents, in other words. All right. And then we have the small intestine. The first segment of the small intestine is the duodenum. The chyme from the stomach enters the duodenum and mixes with secretions from the liver, that would be bile, and from the pancreas, and that would be all these enzymes that break down the food that we eat. It would be enzymes to break down carbohydrates and fats and protein. And then you have the liver, which produces bile, stored in the gallbladder, and that bile enters the small intestine at the duodenum and helps to emulsify fats. That means breaking up fat into fat droplets. Then the pancreas releases exocrine secretions, different enzymes, digestive enzymes, into the duodenum to start breaking down your food. So this is where most of your chemical digestion occurs, is in your small intestine. The wall of the small intestine is folded into villi, and then the cells that line the small intestine even have more folds on the surface called microvilli. And all of that folding increases the surface area so more nutrients can be absorbed. Each of those folds, each of those villi, have blood capillaries, and they also have lacteals. And lacteals are special lymphatic capillaries that fat will be transported into these lacteals, because fat is hard to digest and it takes a longer time. So the lacteals allow for the digestion of fat. They compartmentalize the digestion of fat.